Following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, April 29th, 2026. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella, starting with the weather report. Periods of rain today. There can be ponding on roadways, a high of 55. A little rain during the evening, otherwise overcast tonight, a low of 38. Brisk and chilly tomorrow with a blend of sun and clouds, a high of 50, a low of 34. Friday, cold with a shower, high of 46, low of 34. Saturday, cold with a shower, cold with a shower, high of 47, low of 36. For Sunday, rain and drizzle, high of 50, low of 43. Monday, a little morning rain, a high of 52, low of 48. Tuesday, a few morning showers, a high of 58. For those of us with seasonal allergies, the pollen count today is high. Sunrise was at 6:12 a.m. and sunset tonight is at 8:14 p.m. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Our opening story, Past Due. Late score takes air out of home crowd. The Buffalo Sabres will head back to Boston hoping to finally close out a first-round playoff series. David Pastrnak scored at 9:14 of overtime to help the Boston Bruins stave off elimination, giving the visitors a 2-1 win against the Sabres in Game 5 of their first-round Stanley Cup playoff series, Tuesday night at KeyBank Center. Pasternak's goal came seconds after Bruins goal Jeremy Swayman had stopped Alex Tuch at the other end of the ice. The Sabres squandered the chance to earn their first playoff series win at home since April 20th, 2007, when they completed a 4-1 series win against the New York Islanders in a first-round series with a 4-3 victory at what was then HSBC Arena. The same building in downtown Buffalo was full of life and just waiting to erupt late Tuesday night, hoping to see the Sabres clinch a postseason series at home for the first time in nearly 2 decades. Instead, the Sabres will have their second opportunity in as many games to close out the best-of-7 series against the Bruins, who rebounded from a 6-1 loss Tuesday to win in extra time and force Game 6, scheduled for 7:30 p.m. Friday at TD Garden in Boston. The Bruins cut the series lead to 3-2 on Pasternak's goal. They trailed 1-0 until midway through the second period. The Sabres played in their first overtime game in the playoffs since losing Game 6 to Philadelphia in a first-round series in 2011. How it happened. The Sabres broke an 0-for-39 drought on the power play at 3:35 of the first period after Boston center Mark Kostelic was called for roughing at 2:11. Rasmus Dahlin drove the net and took a pass from the corner from Jason Zucker, then beat Swayman, who had 26 saves, on a shot from the right circle. Dahlin's power play was the first for the Sabres in the playoffs since Brad Boyes scored on the power play on April 26, 2011 at Philadelphia. The Bruins hit the post about 9 minutes into the game, just after a tripping penalty against Noah Ostlund expired. Ostlund, however, left the game with an apparent ankle injury after he got tangled with Boston's Casey Mittelstadt with about 8 minutes remaining in the first period, leaving the Sabres with just 11 forwards for the rest of the night. Elias Lindholm scored to tie the score at 1-1 at 9:24 of the second period when he picked up a loose puck off a rebound and beat Sabres goalie Alex Lyon, who had 27 saves, on a turnaround shot through traffic from the top of the slot. Lyon made 9 saves and Swayman 6 in a scoreless third period when officials waved off an apparent goal by Boston about 3 minutes into overtime when they ruled the puck was underneath Lyon's pad and pushed into the goal by Sean Corelli after the whistle. Pastrnak beat Lyon on a breakaway after getting a long pass from Hampus Lindholm and driving into the zone behind a reaching Matthias Samuelsson deep in the Sabres' defensive zone. What's next? The Sabres will play Game 6 at 7:30 p.m. Friday at TD Garden in Boston. With a win, Buffalo can finish the series and eliminate the Bruins from the playoffs. If the Bruins win, they will send the series back to KeyBank Center for a decisive Game 7 on May 3rd.
Thank you, Larry. Hochul, legislators inch closer to deal on climate change. Governor Kathy Hochul and top state lawmakers are considering new deadlines for climate change goals and a new focus on insurance companies in their quest to lower soaring auto insurance costs. The separate developments represent progress in two of the biggest sticking points in negotiations between Hochul, Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie, Democrat of Bronx, and Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins, the Democrat of Yonkers, on a state budget that was due on April 1st. Under the parameters of the potential deal on climate change, the state would agree to lower emissions by the soft target of 60% by 2040. The state would also use a less restrictive accounting formula to measure emissions than the standard it has been using, according to people with knowledge of the plan, which was first reported by Politico. The Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, that's CLCPA, folks, excuse me, that former Governor Andrew Cuomo signed in 2019 required New York to lower its greenhouse gas emissions, which contribute to pollution and climate change, by 40% by 2030 and 85% by 2050, which is not changing. Environmentalists, including Push Buffalo, sued the Hochul administration last year, alleging it failed to abide by the timelines to set regulations for the CLCPA. In an October ruling, Ulster County-based State Supreme Court Justice Julian Schriebman ruled that the state needed to pass the regulations. Hochul appealed the decision. On March 20th, Hochul wrote in an op-ed in Empire Report, New York, that the state would not meet the CLCPA goals due to rising utility costs, hostility from the Trump administration, and the war in Iran, among other factors. She said gasoline prices at the pump would increase by $2.23 per gallon, and that it would lead to costs of $4,000 for oil and natural gas households in upstate and $2,300 more for natural gas households in New York City. By changing the accounting formula used to measure emissions, she wrote, New York would be aligned with the mechanism used internationally and in nearly every other state. On Tuesday, Hochul reiterated her concerns about the deadlines under the 2019 law. She said it would be unconscionable to impose costs on New Yorkers now. What I've been spending a lot of the last couple of months negotiating with the legislature is understanding that we cannot ask New Yorkers to absorb those costs, Hochul said, adding that she has called for a longer runway further out based in the reality of today that cost pressures have to be factored into this. We cannot ignore the fact that there's businesses and families that would be hurt if we didn't have a different timeline. Also, a different calculation is necessary. Those are some of the issues I've been fighting for. Liz Moran, New York policy advocate at Earth Justice, an environmental advocacy group and supporter of the existing CLCPA goals, criticized the governor's argument. Trump's war is driving gas prices sky high at a time when 1 in 4 New Yorkers are already behind in their energy bills, Moran said in a statement. But instead of leading, Governor Hochul would rather create chaos. The legislature has a choice: join the governor in abdicating responsibility and allow another 15 years of the increasingly unaffordable status quo, or fight to lower energy bills and free New Yorkers from expensive and insecure fossil fuels. Hochul's proposal to lower auto insurance prices would prevent plaintiffs who are scofflaws and more than 50% responsible for crashes from collecting civil damages for pain and suffering. That has drawn opposition from New York State Trial Lawyers Association, which contends it would hurt accident victims and people found as little as 51% legally responsible. In a new wrinkle to her plan, Hochul on Tuesday revealed that she was looking at the ratings that insurance companies used to set their premiums. A reporter had asked Hochul if she was considering the elimination of the state's flex rating system, which allows insurers to raise their rates by an average of up to 5% without seeking approval from the state. We're having conversations about all the drivers that are making it difficult for consumers and also looking at some of the rating, Hochul told reporters during an appearance just outside Albany. Yes, we are looking closely at how insurance companies set their rates and looking at some of the criteria they use. There's two sides to the equation. One is that I want to make sure that some of the drivers of why we have such high insurance premiums in the state are addressed. From what you've been hearing about, that's what you've been hearing about. But also the insurance companies, we're taking a close look at their practices as well. And that's all I'll say on that until the details are out. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Council's queries on city budget plan reflect unease over tax hike. Mayor Sean Ryan has warned city residents that he would propose large tax increases to offset years of disinvestment in city infrastructure and services while still having to also cover a huge gap between what the city spends and the amount it takes in. Now that his proposal has arrived with a 25.8% increase in the tax levy, Common Council members are beginning to look at the budget closely, searching for ways to reduce that promised increase. Ryan laid the blame for the tax increase on more than a decade of city budgeting that routinely underestimated expenses and overestimated projected revenues in a bid to keep the property tax level. But what happened instead, Ryan argued, is that the city spent a generation ignoring maintenance to city infrastructure and cutting services. Meanwhile, inevitable gaps in the budget at the end of the year were paid for with one-time revenue sources that are no longer available. Those annual gaps between expenses and income are what is referred to as a structural deficit, which Ryan said is currently at about $109 million. Even though lawmakers said they understand the mayor's logic, they still hope to reduce the burden of a tax increase, even if any cuts they propose are only symbolic. I do believe that there are many cuts that can be made in this budget, said Common Council President pro tempore Zenaida Everhart. Council members have had a week to review the spending plan before lodging their first questions with the administration. Administration officials have answered some questions already and will answer more during scheduled budget workshops that will begin this week. Ryan said his administration is happy to work with the council and the public to explain the numbers behind his first spending plan. But the $109 million gap they face is real and the situation is dire, he said. That is where we are, Ryan said. Math is math. Public safety. Council members had many questions for the leadership of the city's public safety departments. The police, fire, and public works departments account for 45% of total spending in the plan, not including the fringe benefits paid to current and former employees of those departments. Fringe benefits across all city departments make up 38.5% of all spending, while spending on all other departments accounts for 12.7% of the budget. A main focus for the council members has been the cost of overtime pay, which has consistently run over budget for years, especially in public safety departments. But former mayors and department heads have said that staffing issues, contractual obligations, have limited their ability to keep their numbers down. This has resulted in overtime costs running millions of dollars over budget every year. Both the police and fire departments are projected to end the year about $5 million over budget in overtime each, and the Department of Public Works and Parks Department were more than $1.3 million over budget on their overtime as of April 9th. Ryan's plan would significantly increase the amount of budgeted for overtime to more accurately reflect the historical spending patterns. Other lines in those departments would also jump. In total, spending on police would increase by more than $11 million, while spending on firefighters would jump by more than $4.5 million. The Department of Public Works and Parks Department would see an increase of more than $10 million between their total spending, with Ryan's administration raising that figure to $56.5 million, with plans to buy new equipment this year and an increase in the overtime line by $1.7 million. It reflects the true cost of meeting contractual staffing requirements and responding to calls for service, supporting investigations and staffing large-scale events, both for public gatherings and sporting events, Interim Police Commissioner Craig Macy said of his department's proposal. It all adds up. Many council members asked about small spending increases across many departments. Council Majority Leader Leah Halton Pope asked department heads about proposed increases to lines covering clothing and uniforms for employees and organizational memberships. While the increases may seem small in the scope of the budget, she said, the little things add up. Ryan said increases in some budget lines highlighted by council members, like clothing budgets, are meant to ensure that city workers are provided with proper clothing to keep them safe and protect them against Buffalo's extreme weather. Earlier this year, Ryan said the Department of Public Works had to cancel a cleanup in freezing weather because the crew set out only with cotton gloves, which quickly got soaked in snowy conditions and are inadequate for extreme cold. Others are working without properly marked reflective clothing while on road projects. You see the conditions that our workers are in, whether it's the Broadway Barns or the impound lot, Ryan said, but we're also sending them out into the weather with similarly bad equipment, so it's just one more reflection of the disinvestment in our workforce. Council members have also pointed to the more than $1 million increase in the mayor's office budget, bringing it to a total of $3,334,115, a figure equal to less than 0.5% of the total proposed spending. Council members have been critical of top-end salary increases and the move to a system of governing with 4 deputy mayors. Previous administrations operated with only 1 or 2 deputies. University District Council member Rashid Wyatt said he had a hard time explaining the salary increases to constituents who are barely getting by when taxes are going up significantly. But you then present us a budget that has all these new positions and salaries, and you think it's okay, Wyatt said. But administration officials point out that the salary increases and several new positions were paid for with the elimination of other positions, all of which were approved by the council in amendments to the current budget, producing some savings, and several positions were moved from other departments into the mayor's office, Deputy Mayor Benjamin Swankamp said. Functionally speaking, the overall change between the 4 deputy mayor swap that was budget neutral, Swankamp said. Next steps. Now, Ryan and his administration will continue to explain the plan to the council and the public. The administration held an informational session at the downtown branch of the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library where officials answered submitted questions and helped people check their eligibility for state tax exemptions. They have 6 more sessions planned around the city. Council members will have more opportunities for careful analysis with department heads in upcoming workshops ahead of the May 26th deadline for them to submit amendments to the budget, which Ryan could then veto. Some council members have insisted that making cuts, even if they will have little impact on the size of the levy increase, will show the public that the city is sharing the pain of the financial crisis. But Ryan maintains the people want city infrastructure, services, and amenities to improve, a goal that symbolic personnel changes would have little impact on controlling costs, will only make more difficult. The people want more services, Ryan said. They want more efficient services. They want better services.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:18. Today in history, on this date in 1429, Joan of Arc and her troops entered the besieged city of Orleans during the 100 Years' War. She successfully broke through the siege, which gave the French a victory. In 1854, Lincoln University, originally founded as the Asman Institute, was established in Chester County, Pennsylvania, as the nation's first degree-granting black college. In 1945, the U.S. 7th Army liberated thousands of prisoners in the Nazi concentration camp at Dachau, Germany. The camp was the first to be established by the Nazi regime in 1933, with its number of prisoners estimated to be around 200,000. 1946, the International Military Tribunal for the Far East convened to prosecute former Japanese Prime Minister Hideki Tojo and 28 others for war crimes. 1974, President Richard Nixon belatedly announced the release of transcripts from 46 taped White House conversations as requested by a Watergate trial subpoena issued in July 1973. In 1992, riots erupted across Los Angeles in response to the trial acquittals of 4 police officers indicted on charges of assaulting Rodney King. And in 2011, Prince William of Wales, son of Princess Diana and heir to the British throne, married Catherine Middleton in a televised event. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The local Buffalo News editorial. Unnecessary fight. Controller's refusal proposed costly delays upon Buffalo's infrastructure work. Finally, the bonding fight is over, and as predicted by Mayor Sean Ryan and County Executive Mark Poloncarz, among others, City Controller Barbara Miller-Williams has lost her appeal. As reported by the News' Justin Sundell, she must borrow for capital projects that have been approved by the Common Council. Now, the work on basic infrastructure and improvements that affect the city's public safety and quality of life can get started. It won't be easy. The 2025 construction season was utterly lost, and nothing has gotten any cheaper. In fact, quite the opposite. There is also a considerable backlog of work to be done. As Council Member Mitchell Nowakowski remarked in an email to the editorial board, now we will have two capital budgets of over $200 billion combined hitting the streets with a regional construction industry that will have issues with capacity to do this work. Nowakowski and fellow Council Member Christopher Scanlon are the ones who had to sue Miller-Williams in an effort to get the borrowing done. Nowakowski also noted that items had to be included in the municipal budget that could have been covered by the borrowing. And what about the $200,000 plus cost the city of Buffalo had to spend for outside counsel in order to fight an unnecessary legal battle? That was unnecessary, and it seems apparent from the clear-cut language of the Appellate Division of State Supreme Court's Fourth Department's decision. As the judges wrote, the Charter of the City of Buffalo, the City Charter, grants the Common Council the power to authorize the borrowing of funds by the city in accordance with Article 8 of the Constitution of the State of New York and applicable provisions of state law. Miller-Williams appealed to State Supreme Court Justice Emilio Calavacchio's original decision was based on her insistence that the $28 million debt cap set by her office in its 5-year budget plan cannot be exceeded. Yet, according to documents filed in the lawsuit and memos and correspondence with the mayor's office and Common Council's office, Miller-Williams' office recognized that the cap was advisory and non-binding. All this needless legal battle has done is delay necessary work needed by Buffalo's streets, sidewalks, parks, buildings, and schools. That school infrastructure work has held back at all through some borrowing for this did occur is one of the worst features of the whole affair. Buffalo Public Schools projects are 97% reimbursable through state aid, with the district picking up the remaining costs. Unfortunately, Buffalo Public Schools lost its ability to borrow for its own capital needs after a state program ended in 2024, so now must join the city in bonding. But it doesn't make sense that the BPS projects, given their reimbursable nature, will even be subject to any debt cap, legal or not. This is yet another frustrating nature of the borrowing delay. Reimbursable improvements that maintain student comfort and safety should not be exposed to arbitrary delays. When it comes to critical repairs to Buffalo's infrastructure, everyone needs to be on the same page. Necessary improvements that will make residents' lives better and maintain public safety should be undertaken. Buffalo has the borrowing capacity to fund these improvements. As Ryan has stated throughout many interviews and meetings with the News, Buffalo is at 10% of its borrowing limit, which is lower than other upstate New York cities. While discussing the mayoral transition, referring to the city's obvious debt diet policy, Ryan said, "Every item of capital that they kick down the road still has to be taken care of. But unfortunately, we're now doing at a time where interest rates are 3 times higher than they were when they should have been doing it in the first place. Nothing about this will be easy. But at least now the borrowing can happen and projects can get underway. The era of deferred maintenance is coming to an end."
Thank you, Larry. The editorial cartoons, the first one's by Adam Zeigler of the Buffalo News. And it shows Carolyn Levitt, the White House press secretary, and she's standing there in front of a bunch of microphones making an announcement, and behind her is President Trump. And she is saying to the microphones, he's finally taking a stand against all these shots being fired. And in the meantime, President Trump is standing behind her, and he's holding a poster in one hand that says "Fund control now." And it shows the crossed out image of a microphone, and he's wearing 2 buttons on his lapels. One says "Ban late night jokes," and the other one says "Fire Jimmy Kimmel." And of course, like I said, Caroline Levitt, says he's finally taking a stand against all those shots being fired. And the second cartoon is by Steve Kelly of Creator Syndicate. It shows a man and woman watching television. And then there's Jimmy Kimmel, and he's on the television. And he says, "My job is not to be funny." And one of the parents says, "Well, that explains his joke about Melania having the glow of an expectant widow." Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Everybody's column. Look beyond talking points. Good politicians know how to talk. Great ones, especially the ones who've held office a little too long, know how to make people believe they're speaking the truth, even when they're not quite doing so. They live in the shadowy territory of borderline truth, where words are shaped to sound reassuring and factual while quietly serving their own political survival. When a politician insists a new policy will save taxpayers money, it rarely means your bill will drop. It might just mean the cost shifted somewhere else. When they claim the people have spoken, it often means only a narrow slice of voters who already support them were truly heard. These statements aren't outright lies, but they're engineered to blur reality just enough to keep their power intact. This is how soft deception works in politics. Explain just enough, omit the inconvenient, and always wrap self-interest in the language of public service. Over time, it creates a fog that makes accountability nearly impossible, because everyone feels informed, but few realize how much they've been misled. Honest leadership requires more than saying things that could be true. It requires things that are true, especially when the truth costs you something. Residents need to look beyond political talking points and do their own research to develop a complete 360-degree understanding of the issues that affect their community. Note, Ballotopedia reports that if an incumbent in New York State runs again, they have a roughly 90 to 96% chance of succeeding. This from Bill Blake of Amherst.
Thank you, Larry. Parking downtown is far too difficult. Last Saturday, a friend and I were attending the 3 p.m. performance of Jesus Christ Superstar at Shea's 710 Theater on Main Street in Buffalo. We arrived early to find a parking space since we are both handicapped. After driving around the block several times, none were found. We finally came upon an open lot a few doors from the theater. To our amazement, a large sign at the entrance stated $30 for parking with a credit card. We drove on in desperation. Looking for an attendant, we realized there was none, only a kiosk indicating you needed an app to pay. I tried with no success. A kind young lady came over and asked if she could help. She tried to get to work on my phone but was not successful. I said maybe I should leave the car here. She said, "You don't want to do that. They will put a boot on your car and you will not be able to move it." We decided we should leave to find a place somewhere else. Just then the kind young lady came over and said, "I think I can put your car on my app along with mine." She was able to do so. We gave her $30 in cash to cover the fee. She was our angel and good Samaritan that day. I don't understand why it is so expensive to park and why an attendant gives someone a part-time job cannot be hired. We are not New York City. You want people to come downtown and support businesses, but are not helping them have a good outcome. We are so grateful to this kind angel who helped us. Wake up, Buffalo, and start doing the right thing. And this is written by Philomena Gallagher of Buffalo. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Mess in Iran is all due to Trump. President Trump unilaterally declared a ceasefire without negotiating or caring what it entailed because he so desperately needed a way out of a totally chaotic mess of his own making and panicked. There is no way that he thought that Iran's 10-point plan was a workable basis on which to negotiate, as it clearly contradicted the objectives of his military operation. He lied once again and caved once again because he was backed into a corner. The guy is a total disgrace and not even remotely representative of the majority of the American public. It is utterly astonishing that he could disrupt the global economy twice in less than a year. First with his illegal tariffs and now with an illegal war of his choosing. And it's absolutely stupefying that under his leadership, the United States of America has gone from the most respected country and reliable ally ally in the history of the planet to the target of global contempt and condemnation. And this from David Paletta of Cheektowaga.
Thank you, Larry. On to... You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:30. On to some opinion columns. This one is Another Voice, and it's about equity. It's written by Sherry Saccabone, who is CEO of the Western New York Women's Foundation. 45 years. That's how long it will take women working full-time, year-round, to reach pay parity with men if the latest trends persist. March 26th marched Equal Pay Day, a day representing how far into the current year women must work to earn the same amount paid to men the previous year. That's nearly a 3-month difference. While troubling, the data provides an opportunity to take action to overcome this enormous and growing discrepancy. According to U.S. Census Bureau data, in 2024, women were typically paid 81 cents for every $1 paid to a man. This translates to an annual $13,570 gap for women. In the short term, that 19% disparity may mean less food on the table, missed rent payments, or difficulty affording child care. Long term, the imbalance means less retirement savings, smaller pensions, and lower social security payments. This is the second year in a row the pay gap has grown. Furthermore, the 2-cent drop between 2023 and 2024 marks the largest annual decline in the gender earnings ratio since 1966 and the widest gap since 2016. This stagnation fuels higher rates of poverty among women, especially working mothers. For women of color, mothers, and women with disabilities in the workplace, the pay gap is wider than the 19-cent average, requiring them to work even further into the year to reach pay equity. To propel much-needed significant strides in closing the gender pay gap, we must advocate for the proposed expansion of New York State's existing pay transparency law. This strengthened legislation would require employers to include benefits and non-wage compensation in job postings and allow current employees to ask about the salary range for their job title. Advocate for universal child care. Invest in programs that support women's economic mobility, such as Western New York Women's Foundation's Empower initiative, which aims to lift women from poverty into sustainable careers in high-needs areas. Our society cannot afford another 10 to 20 years of stagnation in women's earnings compared to men. I encourage policymakers, community leaders, employers, and all Western New Yorkers to learn more about the gender pay gap at WNYWomen'sFoundation.org. There are small ways in our everyday lives we can support meaningful progress. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Following is My View, and it is written by Thomas M. Cassidy, and he offers sound safety advice based on experience. Staying vigilant against thieves. I took it seriously when my grandson asked me for some tips to help him keep safe when he travels to Italy for a semester abroad. As the son of a New York Police Department detective and a former New York State senior investigator, I had knowledge and experience to share, but it was not enough. So I took a deep dive into risks associated with international travel, and here's what I found. More than 5 million thefts were reported across Europe last year. It's not just a European problem. From major cities to popular destinations worldwide, criminals find ways to empty your pockets. Awareness is your best defense. I learned early in my career as an investigator just how bold and sneaky thieves can be. It happened while I was at work at the New York State office building on Long Island. A thief sneaked into the women's restroom and noticed several occupied stalls. He reached over a stall door, and grabbed a woman's purse that was hanging on a hook. A fellow investigator happened to be in the hallway, heard the victim scream, and saw the crook race out of the woman's bathroom. The investigator raced down 4 flights of stairs, arrested the purse snatcher in the parking lot, and returned the purse to its owner. Most victims are not that fortunate. Distraction is one of the oldest tricks in the book, and still one of the most effective for pickpocket teams. A loud argument breaks out. Someone asks for directions. A stranger bumps into you. A clipboard appears with a quick survey. While your attention is diverted, an accomplice steals your wallet or phone. Here's how to outfox pickpockets. Carry a decoy wallet with a small amount of cash. Let the pickpocket steal your decoy while your wallet is safely hidden under your shirt in a neck pouch. A worn neck wallet is one of the most effective tools for travelers. It keeps passports, cash, and credit cards concealed and out of sight. But beware! Many wallets and backpacks now include RFID blocking technology. RFID, radio frequency identification, is a system that allows credit cards and passports to transmit information wirelessly. It also means data can potentially be scanned through fabric if someone gets too close with the right equipment. This recently happened to a friend of mine whose credit card was scanned from his gym bag. Today, the most valuable item most college students and travelers carry is their phone. Phones are not only expensive, they contain banking apps, email accounts, travel documents, photos, and personal data. That makes them a prime target for thieves. Keep your phone out of your back pockets or easily accessible bags. Step away from traffic when you are reading maps or texting. One of the most common crimes in major cities is snatch and run phone theft. A thief on a foot or a scooter grabs a phone directly from your hand and appears to disappear in seconds. Here are a few more tips. Plan activities during daylight hours when possible. Stay alert in crowded places like train stations, buses, and tourist locations. Be hypervigilant at night. Most importantly, if something feels off, it probably is. Trust your instincts and walk away from trouble. If you can't walk, run.
Thank you, Larry. Some business and financial news. Western New York Impact Fund invests $1 million in Verity Parente. Verity Parente is raising funds again, and the company developing battery-powered energy storage systems on Buffalo's east side is receiving a significant investment from a local fund. The Western New York Impact Investment Fund is providing $1 million for Verity to accelerate the company's production and sales as it prepares to double its revenue from last year, continue developing critical technology, and expand into new markets. Verity, which was founded in 2017, has revitalized part of the former American Axle and Manufacturing Complex on East Delavan Avenue and sought to have a direct impact on the community by hiring residents close to the plant from low-income neighborhoods. The company has raised more than $180 million from investors, including Tom Golisano, the billionaire Paycheck founder and former Buffalo Sabres owner. The WNY Impact Investment Fund first invested in Verity in 2018, and $3.3 million later has participated in each of the company's funding rounds. The latest investment is part of a larger round for Verity, mostly available to previous investors. Verity is demonstrating that advanced energy technology can be designed, built, and deployed right here in Western New York. John M. Williams, founder and CEO of Verity, said in a statement, "This investment reflects a shared belief in the role that innovation can play in strengthening both our economy and our energy future." Verity had $35 million in revenue in 2025 and is on track to double its sales this year. It achieved its first meaningful revenue several years ago with its energy storage systems. The company is also approaching 150 employees, 30 more than it had 2 years ago. Demand has grown for its lithium-ion battery technology for energy storage system applications as customers try to manage their energy use and expenses. The company made its initial splash in making batteries for construction equipment as an alternative to the noise and emissions stemming from diesel fuel. Verity has received crucial certifications for its fail-safe technology and opened new markets that include commercial real estate and public safety buildings. Also, the company recently acquired certain assets of U.S. Best Corp., positioning Verity as a competitive solution for the rapidly growing data center market. This investment supports Veridi's ongoing efforts to scale production, enhance product development, and expand deployment of its battery energy storage systems across commercial and industrial applications, Williams said. The potential market is significant and touches nearly every user of electricity in the nation. The company has also become a model for place-based social impact. Veridi transformed its 42-acre headquarters in Buffalo into a thriving clean energy campus with more than half its industrial space back online. It has also sought to have a direct impact on the community when it comes to hiring. The nonprofit Green Force Training has been recruiting and training workers for Veridi Parente. From the start, Williams envisioned drawing employees from neighborhoods adjacent to the plant, connecting residents of low-income areas with jobs and making transportation less of a factor to get to work. Veridi embodies our belief that strong financial performance and measurable community impact can go hand in hand, Tom Quinn, CEO of Western New York Impact Investment Fund, said in a statement. The WNY Impact Fund has now made 27 investments worth more than $14.6 million in 16 companies, including Top Seeds, Lender Logic, Buffalo Film Works, Arbol, The Rookery, 3AM Innovations, CA Hill Tech, Circuit Clinical, and Clean Fiber. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Fed officials likely to hold rates steady amid Iran war. Federal Reserve policymakers will gather in Washington this week in what may be Jerome Powell's last meeting as head of the U.S. Central Bank. With energy prices still elevated and the Iran war at a standstill, and likely to prolong uncertainty about the economic and monetary policy outlook. A May 15th endpoint for Powell's 8 years at the Fed's helm now appears more likely after a major obstacle to the U.S. Senate's confirmation of his appointed successor, Kevin Warsh, was removed on Friday. As a final act, Powell will likely oversee on Wednesday another vote by the central bank's policy-setting Federal Open Market Committee to hold its benchmark overnight interest rate steady in the 3.50 to 3.75 range where it has been since December. Still, the meeting and Powell's press conference afterward could settle key members, including whether policymakers will nod to the potential for rate hikes later this year if inflation accelerates. The question of whether Powell will remain on the Fed's Board of Governors, even if Warsh is confirmed in time to run the next policy meeting in June, could also be addressed. The U.S. Department of Justice on Friday dropped a controversial criminal probe of Powell over renovations at the Fed's headquarters in Washington, potentially satisfying the demands of a key Republican senator who threatened to delay Warsh's confirmation because of it. Powell also had made an end of the probe a necessary condition of leaving the Fed's board. Although U.S. central bank chiefs traditionally have resigned their board seats when their leadership terms have expired, Powell said last month he might stay on and would make that decision based on what I think is best for the institution and for the people he served. A broader test connected with President Trump's effort to encroach on the Fed's independence. Powell could remain a Fed governor until January 2028, the last full year of Trump's presidency, and a long epilogue for the man the president has nicknamed too late for failing to deliver the big rate cuts he demanded. The current Fed chief will likely be quizzed on his plans as well as on the economic substance of a policy debate still clouded by the U.S.-Iran war. When the war was started on February 28th, central bankers said the impact on inflation and economic growth would hinge on how quickly it ended and whether oil prices reversed to pre-war levels of around $70 a barrel. 8 weeks later, the disruption to global oil and other supply chains at a point where policymakers are taking inflation risks more seriously.
Thank you, Larry. Companies face pricing stress test. The fragile demand recovery seen by consumer companies globally is at risk of getting stalled by chances of more price hikes as a result of soaring energy and commodity costs due to the Middle East conflict. On Friday, U.S. consumer giant Procter & Gamble flagged a roughly $1 billion hit to its fiscal 2027 profit as higher crude prices hurt packaging, plastic materials, and logistics. The warning is a clear sign that the oil shock is adding pressure on companies to raise prices worldwide to tide over the growing costs across their supply chains that have now begun to squeeze profit margins. A Reuters review of company statements since the war began shows 24 companies have withdrawn or cut financial guidance, 35 have flagged price increases, and another 36 have warned of a financial hit. Inflation across food, energy, healthcare, and many other areas of spending has taken a toll on consumers and how they assess value. Recent geopolitical events have elevated this to a new level of concern. P&G Finance Chief Andre Schulten said on an earnings call. In short, the consumer path to purchase is changing every day, Schulten said, adding he expects an even more intense period of change over the next 3 to 5 years. This time round, consumer staples companies will try their best to pass on any extra costs, but they might struggle, said A.J. Bell, head of markets Dan Coatsworth. The warnings mirror a broader pattern through earnings calls this quarter, with companies across industries flagging higher transport and raw material costs, supply chain strains, and reduced visibility due to the nearly 2-month conflict. Companies are increasingly having to make the difficult choice of whether to defend prices or let volumes do the work instead. That trade-off will only get harder as if energy costs keep climbing through the years, said Xavier Wang, market analyst at eToro, an Israel-based trading platform. Rising oil and gas prices have pushed up inflation readings in Europe and the U.S., fanning concerns that higher prices could squeeze household budgets, just as consumers were beginning to stabilize after the post-pandemic cost of living crisis. The companies best positioned to weather this are the ones that have made hedging decisions early and sit in categories where consumers don't have an easy out, Wong said. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. From Business Briefly, UAE will leave OPEC. The United Arab Emirates said on Tuesday it was quitting OPEC, dealing a heavy blow to the oil producers group as an unprecedented energy crisis triggered by the Iran war exposes discord among Gulf nations. The loss of the UAE, a long-standing OPEC member, could weaken the group, which has usually sought to show a united front despite internal disagreements over geopolitics and production quotas. And a brief headline here, U.S. consumer confidence unexpectedly ticked up in April as a ceasefire in the war with Iran boosted stock prices, while labor market perceptions improved, a survey showed on Tuesday. The conference board said its consumer confidence index climbed 0.6 points to 92.8 this month. Data for March was revised to show higher at the index at 92.2 instead of 91.8.
Thank you, Larry. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Baker, Marvin P. Jr. Chapman, Bruce J. Cosgriff, Mary Louise, née Nutzling. Gray, Artie. Guaz, née Platek, Mary Ann. Hobart, Joseph F. Hooper, Robert J. Jr. Johnson, Jerome, Jerry J. Miller, Norman. Ode, Charles. Okanuski, Darrell M. Rogerson, Charles. Summers, Martha. Vineyard, Mark. Waltz, Donna. Raisin, Richard Joseph, and 2 national obituaries. Netta Taylor Ross, the last surviving member of pioneering 1960s pop group The Ronettes, has died. She was 80. And Dylan Carter, an alum of The Voice, was killed over the weekend in a car accident in his native South Carolina. If you need further information on any of these names, give us a call at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Royal Stars. Happy birthday for Wednesday, April 29, 2026. You're confident and determined in your approach to work. You're reliable, optimistic, incisive, and independent. This is a year of learning and teaching. Take time to renew your spiritual or religious beliefs. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. Aries, 3 stars. Today, there's a tendency to jump to conclusions. Definitely something to be aware of. In particular, you might experience this when talking with family members, spouses, or partners. Tonight, genuinely listen. Taurus, 4 stars. Be patient with coworkers today. Likewise, resist the tendency to think something is better than it is tonight to get organized. Gemini, 3 stars. Parents must be patient with their kids today. Likewise, romantic partners must be patient with each other. Tonight, socialize. Cancer, 4 stars. Keep the peace at home today, even though dealings with parents and older family members might become challenging. Tonight, relax. Leo, 3 stars. On the whole, this is a friendly, upbeat day. Nevertheless, you might get involved in an argument about politics, religion, or racial issues. Tonight, learn and discuss. Virgo, 4 stars. Steer clear of disputes about money and possessions today because this is basically a pleasant, friendly day. Tonight, check your possessions. Libra, 3 stars. The moon is in your sign today at odds with Jupiter and Mars, which can make you jump too quickly in the wrong direction. Tonight, you're in charge. Scorpio, 3 stars. You are very keen to work hard now and accomplish as much as possible. Unfortunately, you need more sleep. Tonight, privacy. Sagittarius, 3 stars. Friendships are important to you today. However, be careful because today the moon is challenged by your own ruler, Jupiter. Tonight, friends. Capricorn, 3 stars. People notice you today. Be aware of this, especially because some people will know personal details about your private life. Tonight, show respect. Aquarius, 4 stars. Today is full of excitement and high energy. You want to do something different. You want to kick things up a notch. Tonight, explore and learn. Pisces, 4 stars. It's fortunate that you're skilled with your communications this month because this will allow you to handle any difficult situation. Tonight, check your finances.
Thank you, Larry. Hints from Heloise. Why some shoppers sanitize their carts. Dear Heloise, this is in regards to the reader who says they don't understand why people use antibacterial wipes when entering a store and suggests they only use them on their hands after shopping. The reader obviously doesn't know the grocery carts can be dirtier than a public restroom. The most cited data on this comes from a study conducted by the University of Arizona, led by microbiologist Dr. Charles Gerba, often nicknamed Dr. Germ. Here's the breakdown of what they found. About 72% of carts tested positive for coliform bacteria, which is a primary indicator of fecal matter. About 50% of carts specifically tested positive for E. coli. Putting your groceries in a contaminated cart will subject them to these contaminants. I suggest wiping down your cart with antibacterial wipes before shopping. And that's from Kurt. Mildew shower problem. Dear Heloise, for a couple of years we've had a walk-in shower that includes plastic panes and a big door. I constantly fought with mildew despite scrubbing things every day using vinegar-soaked rag. Shout out to Heloise. At a point, I realized that humidity was fueling the problem because moist air would get trapped in the space after hot showers. So I began leaving the shower door open as much as possible for dry air to circulate and alleviate the dampness. The mildew problem quickly subsided. There's still a little bit of it, but vinegar continues working its wonders for easy removal. That's from Jim. Leg cramp solution. Dear Heloise, when you wake up with a painful leg cramp, quickly place your other foot above the toes of the affected leg and press the toes of your affected leg upward towards your shin. This technique forces the contracted muscle to stretch, helping to stop the cramp. From Avid Heloise Reader. Avid Heloise Reader. I usually just stand up and walk around for a couple of minutes, but I'll give this a try. Thanks for writing in and reading my column. From Heloise. Salad sound off. Dear Heloise, I've never responded to a hint before, but the one from Neater Eater in Omaha, Nebraska really bothered me. If you're already buying a pre-made salad kit, then please just use the plastic the product already comes in. Why take it out and use another cup or spoon? Also, if you're already taking the time to separate it out from the original packaging, why not just get the ingredients to make your own salad? From Julie. And mark it up. Dear Heloise, I've solved 3 frustrations with a simple permanent marker. When sheets and mattress pads are almost but not quite square, I write top/bottom and side on the appropriate edges. No more guessing which is which. When I transition towels into rags, I place a black dot in the back corner of the item. This way I always know which rags don't belong in the drawer. And when I have a prescription tube of cream or gel where the directions are outside of the box, I write the directions on the tube and recycle the box. Hope these lessen someone else's frustrations too, and that's from Karen. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Senate blocks resolution to require vote on Cuba. The Republican-led U.S. Senate on Tuesday blocked a Democratic-led resolution that would have barred President Donald Trump from military action against Cuba without congressional approval. The Senate voted 51 to 47 on a procedural measure that blocked a war powers resolution, as members of Trump's party argued that there was no active U.S. hostilities against Cuba. Republican Senator Rick Scott of Florida said a war powers vote was not appropriate because Trump has not deployed troops. Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, a lead sponsor of the measure, argued that U.S. efforts to stop fuel shipments to the communist-ruled island constitute military action. And Purdue Pharma gets sentence of $5.5 billion. OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma was sentenced Tuesday to $5.5 billion in fines and penalties stemming from its 2020 guilty plea to charges of deceiving government regulators and paying kickbacks to doctors to boost opioid sales. The sentencing in New Jersey federal court clears the way for the company to dissolve in bankruptcy and use its assets to fund a $7.4 billion settlement intended to compensate people harmed by the opioid epidemic.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, April 29th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today are
Larry Beanon
and Linda Ranella.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beenan.
On to some local and regional news. Shields confirmed to lead Buffalo Police in close vote. Mayor Sean Ryan's pick to lead the Buffalo Police Department has been confirmed by a close margin. Erica Shields, who led departments in Louisville and Atlanta previously, was confirmed by the Common Council in a 5-4 vote. Before the meeting, council members Rashid Wyatt, David Rivera, and Mitchell Nowakowski all announced their support of Shields. Joining them in confirming Shields were Council President Joel Fulleretto and Lovejoy District Council member Brian Bowman. Casting no votes were Council President Pro Tempore Zanetta Everhart, Council Majority Leader Leah Halton Pope, North District Council member Joseph Golenbeck, and South District Council member Christopher Scanlon. Shields will be the first woman and first openly gay person to lead the department. Ryan, in a written statement, said he appreciates the council's confirmation. I'm confident she will lead with integrity and help move Buffalo forward with the focus on modern policing, Ryan said. I look forward to working with her to deliver safer neighborhoods and stronger community trust. And also, SUNY taps Burris as next president of Buffalo State. Jennifer Burris, a top official at Lenoir-Rhyne University in North Carolina, will be the next president of SUNY Buffalo State University. Burris was appointed to the position on Tuesday by the State University of New York Board of Trustees. Her appointment takes effect July 1st. I was drawn to this position because of Buffalo State's place as SUNY's urban engaged anchor institution, a powerhouse for social mobility that creates life-changing opportunities for first-generation and transfer students, Burris said. Burris will succeed Benita Durand, who has served as Buffalo State's interim president since 2023. In a ceremonial move, the SUNY Board of Trustees on Tuesday appointed Durand president for the remainder of her term, officially making her the institution's 10th president. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. SOSHA withdraws nomination to be Park Service Chief. Delaware North Scott Sosha will not become the director of the National Park Service, but the executive of the Buffalo headquartered Hospitality and Food Service Management Company says that was his choice. Sosha said in a statement that he withdrew his name from consideration to serve as director of the National Park Service for personal reasons in March. It was reported Monday that President Trump withdrew his nomination of Sosha to lead the National Park Service, and the White House did not give a reason. That announcement may have simply been part of Sosha's process to move on after the decision. I am grateful to the President and Secretary of the Interior for the confidence placed in me and appreciative of the consideration shown throughout the nomination process, Sosha said in the statement. I remain committed to the stewardship of the American national parks and to providing outstanding guest experiences for all visitors, he added. Sosha, who lives in East Aurora, was nominated for the federal post in February. Delaware North said at the time it was a proud moment for Sosha and the company. It means Sosha, 54, is expected to remain with the company as a group president overseeing Delaware North's multi-billion-dollar parks and resorts division. Delaware North had no comment. Sosha has overseen Delaware North's operations in 6 national parks for nearly a decade, so he has plenty of experience in this space. But his nomination was criticized by conservationists who had called him unqualified for the role over his lack of experience in government. They also questioned if Sosha's private sector work provided the experience he would need to oversee hundreds of national parks and monuments that range from major cultural institutions like the Statue of Liberty to more remote sites. Opponents also honed in on Delaware North's response after it lost a $2 billion bid to continue operating at Yosemite. The company filed a lawsuit in 2016 claiming it had intellectual rights to certain names being used around the park. The lawsuit was settled 3 years later for $12 million during Trump's first term in office. The National Park Service has been without a permanent director for more than a year while enduring widespread layoffs during that time, so Sosha's nomination was also met with some optimism. The Park Service is currently being overseen by Jessica Boren, who was the agency's comptroller and acting director. It did not have a Senate-confirmed director during Trump's first term, when it was led by a series of acting directors. Socha never relinquished his role at Delaware North throughout the federal confirmation process. He's been with the company since 1999. Parks and resorts have become a critical part of Delaware North's business and future sustainability, as the number of visitors to state and national parks and resorts have jumped in recent years, especially since the pandemic. It provides hospitality services in national parks such as Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, and Shenandoah. Delaware North has also been focused on expanding outside the parks themselves, as it is doing around Yellowstone and Yosemite with lodging, hotels, and resorts. The nomination of Socha followed widespread firings within the National Park Service as part of efforts by Trump administration to reduce the agency's size. Since January 2025, it has lost nearly 25% of its permanent staff, which accounts for more than 4,000 eliminated positions. The Trump administration also has faced blowback for the removal or planned removal of national park exhibits about slavery, climate change, and the destruction of the Native American culture. The Parks Division is facing other significant challenges, such as maintenance backlogs, budget issues, and environmental concerns. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Some entertainment news here. Lopez is returning to Western New York to film new movie with Danza. Actor and entertainer Mario Lopez is returning to Buffalo, and he's bringing Tony Danza with him. Lopez and Danza of Taxi and Who's the Boss, will star as father and son in Christmas at the Starlight, scheduled to start filming locally in June. Dominic Lopez, Mario's son, will play his son in the film. It will premiere over the holiday season as part of the Great American Christmas programming on Great American Family Channel, Great American Pure Flix, and GFAM+. In the film, Danza plays a song and dance man ready to sell the Starlight, a supper club he has owned for 40 years. The possibility of the sale and what it means to family and community becomes an emotional journey for multiple generations. Working with Tony Danza as my father in his story is incredibly special, and having Dominic play my son makes it even more personal, Lopez said in a press announcement of the film. Christmas at the Starlight is about family, honoring where you came from, and recognizing the traditions and people that shape your life, Lopez said. This is the third Made in Buffalo film with connections to Lopez. He was here a year ago, starring in The Christmas Spark for Great American Family, and later produced Mario Lopez Presents Chasing Christmas that also starred Dominic. The movies are part of a partnership between Great American Media and Great Point Buffalo Film Studio that was announced in 2025 to make up to 24 productions here over 2 years. They are halfway to that goal with 12 movies made so far. 8 premiered over the holidays in 2025. In 2026, Blessings in Disguise premiered in March. Meet Me at the Margins will premiere in June, and Love Under the Christmas Tree and Trouble with Mistletoe will premiere at Christmas. The movies have been filmed on location throughout Buffalo and Niagara County and at Great Point Buffalo and Niagara Street, a studio complex with 3 sound stages, offices, and other facilities. Great American Media is the parent company of the Great American Family Channel, Great American Pure Flix streaming, and GFAM+ app. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. McKinley's career paths impress state labor chief. Door is wide open for students in apprenticeships, Reardon says. New York State Department of Labor Commissioner Roberta Reardon made some unexpected acquaintances during her first hour at Buffalo McKinley High School on Tuesday. She met a giant tortoise named Frank, a Burmese python named Steve, and some remarkably active koi fish in a pond who appeared to be having a fight over some food. Guided by McKinley students, Reardon explored the state's second-largest educational greenhouse, receiving a crash course in flowers and plants, and also the wildlife that thrive in the different climates and seasons. Once Reardon advanced past the horticulture and ecology areas, the next step was the school's gem for showing off its career and technical education capabilities. Nearly completed modular cabin worked on by building trades classes at McKinley, carpentry, electrical, plumbing, and general construction from start to finish. Some of these young people are going to go right into the building trades, Reardon said. The door is wide open. Others are going to go to college. Some of them are blending. I talked to a young man who wants to build his own landscaping companies. They're so filled with excitement and appreciation for the education they're getting and the opportunity this is. Reardon visited McKinley during National Apprenticeship Week. She recognized the school as a distinguished pathway partner and was eager to highlight the Department of Labor's registered apprenticeships. These are federal workforce initiatives where prospective workers are paid an entry-level wage to gain experience under an expert in one of several fields, and once skills are developed, concludes with a nationally recognized industry credential. It's a real sweet spot for the governor, Reardon said. The first time we met her 10 years ago, that's what we talked about, and we've talked about it ever since. Registered apprenticeship programs are well established in Western New York. 1,400 registered apprentices across 98 programs, a department spokesperson said, but most are related to manufacturing. Reardon explained the State Department of Labor now eyes a broader focus. Among the examples Reardon shared of new apprenticeships were a special education teaching residency, a cybersecurity apprenticeships, as well as more glamorous regional options such as jewelry setting at Tiffany & Company and handmade Steinway pianos in Astoria. They are rigorous courses of training. They have training outlines that are approved by the state ed, the commissioner said. The person who sponsors the apprenticeship takes on the responsibility of the training, and we have standards and guidelines they have to adhere to. Reardon said her larger purpose was to better intertwine the worlds of business and education. I grew up in a world where education was one piece of the world and work was another, said the commissioner, who was originally from Indiana, and that is changing rapidly. What this means for McKinley. Reardon was whisked through the Elmwood Avenue building Tuesday by Principal Terrence Jenkins and Robert Harris, Buffalo Schools Director of Career and Technical Education. Harris said the district's direct entry partnership with the Department of Labor helps Buffalo students develop basic work skills, tuition-free, that allow them to better compete for a registered apprenticeship. By going through the program, they get more points to get into a union that they might not ordinarily have, Harris said. Harris said his department has worked to build more partnerships outside classroom spaces. His department purchased 2 buses a few years ago, he said, to transport vocational students to places such as Front Park, Tift Nature Preserve, and Silo City, and foster relationships with environmental nonprofits such as the Black Rock Riverside Alliance. While the Building Trades program no longer constructs full-size homes for Habitat for Humanity, McKinley students each year build multiple smaller cabins with support from the Construction Exchange of Buffalo and Western New York that are auctioned off once completed. Carpentry teacher Matthew Krotz said Tuesday that completed cabins last year found homes in Newfane and on Military Avenue in Buffalo. Krotz said it is not uncommon to see McKinley graduates at construction sites around Western New York, and that McKinley students have taken the registered apprenticeship route before. The building trades emphasis resonated with some high-profile residents, too. Former Buffalo Bill Jamarcus Ingram enjoyed the program so much he visited the school each Tuesday last year prior to his move to the Houston, Texas. McKinley's career and technical education programs are one of several such high school options in Buffalo schools. Other offerings include auto repair program at Burgard, information technology at Hutch Tech, and food service operations at Emerson and Buffalo Culinary. McKinley has 2 special education vocational classes, too, focused on printing and horticulture. Reardon interactions with vocational students left an impression on this visiting state leader. This is a really fabulous thing, she said. I wish it were standard.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:15. On to sports. Sports shorts first. Lindsay Award finalists named: Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers, Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Macklin Celebrini of the San Jose Sharks were named finalists in the Ted Lindsay Award on Tuesday. The award goes each year to the most outstanding player in the NHL as chosen by members of the NHL Players Association. The three finalists are among the top 4-point scorers in the NHL during the 25-26 season. Kucherov is the reigning award holder. The date of the trophy announcement was not disclosed. LIV Golf CEO Scott O'Neill said this month that LIV's season would continue exactly as planned, uninterrupted and at full throttle. But The Atlantic and other outlets reported on Monday that the LIV Golf Louisiana event in June will be postponed. Per the reports, O'Neill and Secretary of Louisiana Economic Development Susan Bourgeois spoke on Friday and agreed to postpone the June 25th, 28th tournament in the wake of news that Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund was preparing to pull funding from LIV. The two sides hope to plan a re-envisioned event in the fall, per The Athletic. NOLA.com reported that LIV is exploring a smaller exposition-type tournament in New Orleans in the fall. LIV Golf's team championship in late August is the last event currently scheduled. And Trump statue. A statue of President Trump at Trump National Doral is the talk of the driving range on Tuesday at the PGA's Tour Cadillac Championship. Standing 15 feet tall, 22 feet with the pedestal, the gold leaf bronzed statue of the two-time and current U.S. President was installed at the resort earlier this month. The statue, created by artist Alan Cottrill and commissioned by a cryptocurrency group, $Patriot, depicts Trump with raised fist following a July 2024 assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Turning to hockey, Bruins answered call. Sabres must counter. You had to figure Game 4 on Sunday was the outlier. The Boston Bruins had to be better than that. The Buffalo Sabres knew it. Frankly, the whole hockey world knew it too. The Bees didn't take a morning skate here Tuesday before Game 5. They huddled in their downtown hotel for the day, and defenseman Nikita Zadorov then laid out their thoughts for reporters in a session a couple of hours before face-off in KeyBank Center. Everybody saw the result. It is a slap to the face and just cannot happen with our team, our organization, our identity, Zadorov said of the Sabres' 6-1 cakewalk Sunday in TD Garden. Today, we've just got to come out and play like it's the last game of our lives, like our lives are on the line. We've just got to go out there and try to die on the ice. Prescient words indeed. The Bruins will live for another game, and suddenly this series is wide open again. The Sabres were a goal away, just needed somebody to pull a Jason Pominville or a Derek Plant or a Michael Grosek, get a goal, win a series, and be a Buffalo hero forever. Didn't happen. David Pastrnak, mostly invisible in the two games in Boston, had a big night and broke Buffalo's hearts with 9:14 of overtime on a mini breakaway with a lovely deke around Alex Lyon. Boston 2, Buffalo 1. The Sabres' lead is cut to 3-2. We couldn't wait to get out there today, Boston coach Marco Sturm said. Our guys were dialed in. Guys came ready to play. Today we had that vision in our mind that we were going to go home to Boston. Such a shame, really. The Sabres had come close to 30 seconds earlier when Alex Tuch was stopped in tight by Jeremy Swayman. Marat Kunstanov got the puck away from Peyton Krebs just inside the Boston blue line as Pastrnak hit the ice on a change. Pastrnak, who was slippery behind the Buffalo defense in games 1 and 2, barely stayed onside in taking the long flip from defenseman Hampus Lindholm, and he was able to hold off Matthias Samuelsson in getting in on Lyon. Backhand, forehand, tap-in, heartbreak in Buffalo. Just a super tight game, Lyon said. They were obviously very desperate. Just one play at the end from a really dangerous player. The post-game bummer was the news on Buffalo center Noah Ostlund. Coach Lindy Ruff said it doesn't look good when asked for an update on the talented 20-year-old who appeared to have his left ankle twisted awkwardly under him during a tie-up in the corner with former Sabre Casey Middlestad. Sure looked like something along the lines of a high ankle sprain, which is generally a week-to-week issue and will make Josh Norris re-enter the game for Game 6. Trust me when I say the noise level of KeyBank completely lapped what we've heard in Boston, where Stanley Cup games have clearly become passé, and a whole bunch of folks have most of their attention on the Celtics' NBA title run. Of course, now that we're going back for Game 6, you can bet the Boston crowd will put on a big show Friday night. This night began with a viral note when anthem singer Carney Clune's microphone went south early in "O Canada," and the crowd performed most of the song without her. The Sabres have performed the anthem before every game since their birth in 1970, in salute to our neighbors to the north and the many Buffalo fans who cross the Peace Bridge every night. The confusion about it in Game 1 from folks in Boston and beyond was bizarre. It took all of 7 seconds for the first full-throated taunt of sway man," to fill the air in an attempt to give the Boston goalie pause to ponder a repeat of Sunday's disaster. It didn't happen. The Bruins inserted 3 players into their series debut in the lineup, pretty much a sign of desperation. One of them was old friend Andre Yogiharu. The Sabres scored a real-life power play goal when Rasmus Dahlin connected off a Jason Zucker feed at 3:35 of the first, instantly putting the building up for grabs. In hindsight, maybe an early goal on the heels of Sunday's game wasn't the best thing to happen to the Sabres. The Dahlin goals gave the Sabres 10 of the last 11 scores in the series. It made you wonder how many more would follow. As it turned out, the home team stayed mostly quiet. Buffalo's forwards found very little ice through the neutral zone, a similar problem to Game 2 here. In total, the Sabres' 3 home games in the series have been pedestrian to date, other than those crazy 6.5 minutes in Game 1 when all you know what broke out and 4 goals turned a 2-0 deficit into a 4-3 win for all time. The Bruins made sure this one was no track meet. Once they got Elias Lindholm's tying goal at 9:24 of the second period, this one ground to a halt. The Sabres had just 21 shots on goal through regulation and only 13 from their entire forward core. By comparison, Buffalo had 19 shots on goal in the first period alone on Sunday. The success of road teams has been growing trend in this series. They're now 4-1 in the 5 games. So maybe that bodes well for Buffalo in Game 6. This one was a huge disappointment. A chance at the first series win since 2007 and perhaps a week off to rest. Now, a major task awaits. The Sabres have to answer in Boston the way the Bruins did in Buffalo.
Thank you, Larry. What the Bills might be. With the draft now a memory, a look at a possible 53-man roster, and is written by reporter Jay Skursky. There could still be a tweak or two, but for the most part, the Buffalo Bills roster is pretty much set. After drafting 10 players and reportedly coming to agreements with 10 more rookie undrafted free agents, the Bills roster is at 88 players by an unofficial count. That leaves just 3 open spots on the 90-man roster, which for the Bills is actually 91, because offensive tackle Travis Clayton is exempt as part of the NFL's International Player Pathway Program. President of Football Operations and General Manager Brandon Beane frequently mentions how roster building is a 12-month-a-year job, so the possibility exists that a free agent signing or trade can still be made between now and September that will impact the initial 53-man roster. For now, though, here's a look at what might look like following the draft. Quarterbacks, 2, Josh Allen, Kyle Allen. Analysis. The Bills did not draft a quarterback with any of their 10 picks, which is good news for Kyle Allen and Shane Bugle, which is each of whom figures to have a job in the fall as either Josh Allen's backup or as a practice squad quarterback. We'll go with Kyle Allen for the active roster in this projection based on experience. Running backs, 3, James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson. Analysis. Another position that the Bills didn't touch in the draft, meaning there's no reason to expect the depth chart will be changed in any way. The question here is whether fullback Jason Anker, who reportedly has agreed to sign with the team as a rookie undrafted free agent, will do enough to make the roster. Acker will have the clearest path to a spot on the 53-man roster of the team's undrafted rookie class, which won't be finalized until the start of rookie minicamp next week. For now, we'll leave Acker off the active roster, but acknowledge that could change as soon as the next projection after mandatory minicamp in June. Tight ends, 3, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, Jason Haas. Analysis. Yet another position the Bills didn't touch in the draft, meaning no changes should be expected. Additionally, Kelki Latu is back after spending most of last season on the practice squad. He was elevated to the game day roster multiple times, so knows the offense well. This is an easy group to project. Wide receivers, 7, DJ Moore, Khalil Shakir, Joshua Palmer, Keon Coleman, Trent Sherfield, Skylar Bell, Nicole Hartman. Analysis. Going light at both running back and tight end allows the Bills to keep one more receiver than might be considered normal. In this projection, that extra receiver is Hardman, whose best path to the 53-man roster is likely as a return specialist. The top 6 receivers, which now includes Bell, looks to be set in April. Each has defined roles, with Sheffield's primarily coming as a blocker and on special teams. The real competition in training camp might come down to Palmer, Coleman, and Bell to see who earns a jersey on game days. Palmer and Coleman were not factors on special teams last year, and Bell didn't play them in college either. It's time to take Bean at his word that Coleman will be a part of the team in 2026. By not drafting a receiver until the 4th round, the Bills gave Coleman a vote of confidence. Larry?
Well, continuing on now with the offensive line, there are 10. Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, Connor McGovern, Osiris Torrance, Alec Anderson, Austin Corbett, Lloyd Cushenberry III, Tylen Grable, Chase Lunt, and Jude Lowry. Analysis. 4/5 of the starting line from last season returns, with the only departure being David Edwards, who signed a big money deal with the Saints as a free agent. Anderson and Corbett are expected to compete for that job, with the loser being a top reserve. Cushenberry's addition in free agency pushes Cedric Fran Granger off the 53-man roster. It's possible the Bills decide to keep just 9 players up front, which would leave Grable and Lunt competing for the last spot. As a 4th-round draft pick, Lowry's spot is secure. The one concern here might be interior depth, although it's possible Lowry or Lunt could get some reps at guard during training camp. Defensive line, 6. Ed Oliver, Deion Walker, T.J. Sanders, Landon Jackson, Dwayne Carter, and Zane Durant. Analysis. As a 5th-round pick, Durant will get every opportunity to make the team, but his spot shouldn't be written down in ink. Fedarian Mathis doesn't make this 53 roster in this projection, but he might be number 54. It figures to be a tight competition between Durant and Mathis. Can Carter bulk up enough to play nose tackle behind Walker? That will be something to watch in the spring and summer. It feels like the Bills still lack a true run-stuffing nose tackle, although that appears to be a priority of outside observers more than it is with the team's front office and coaching staff. Linebackers, 9. Greg Rousseau, Bradley Chubb, T.J. Parker, Michael Hoyt, Javon Solomon, Terrell Bernard, Dorian Williams, Joe Andreessen, Caleb Alarms Orr. Analysis. Will Hoyt be ready for the start of the season after tearing his Achilles tendon in November? Even if not, the depth at outside linebacker / edge rusher improved when the team chose Clemson's Parker in the 2nd round. Parker immediately becomes the number 3 edge rusher behind Rousseau and Chubb. Solomon can't serve as the number 4 rusher until Hoyt is ready, then occupy a special teams role. The inside linebacker depth improved when being selected Alarms or in the fourth round, although it will be interesting to see if the team prioritizes bringing veteran Shaq Thompson back now that the draft is over to provide greater depth. Cornerbacks. 5. Christian Benford, Maxwell Hairston, David Igbinosun, D. Alford, Jordan Hancock. Analysis. Alford is the projected nickel cornerback, while Hancock will back him up and will also play a role on special teams. What this projection shows is how big of a priority the need for an outside cornerback really was in the draft behind Benford and Hairston. That's why Bean chose Igbinosun and even made a small trade up to do it. I'd argue there's still need another outside cornerback to take to training camp because the depth here remains suspect. None of the other players in the 90-man roster have meaningful experience. Toriano Pride Jr., a 7th-round pick, has a better shot at making the 53 roster than a lot of other recent 7th-rounders have for the Bills. Safeties. 5. Cole Bishop, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Geno Stone, Jalan Kilgore, Sam Franklin Jr. Analysis. The most noteworthy cut in this projection is Damar Hamlin, not so much for his impact on the field, but for what he's meant for the franchise off the field since going into cardiac arrest during a game against the Bengals in 2023. Kilgore's addition, however, could be the acquisition that leads to the Bills moving on from Hamlin. Franklin's lure is primarily to play special teams. Specialists. 3. Tyler Bass, Reed Ferguson, Tommy Doman. Analysis. We'll give Doman another year of Bean's 7th-round picks. The edge here over incumbent punter Mitch Wishnowsky. Doman punted at Michigan State before transferring to Florida, so he's got experience in cold weather conditions. He's also handled some kickoff duties, which could be a benefit if the Bills want to limit Tyler Bass' workload a year removed from missing an entire season because of injury. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:32. On to Asking Eric. Husband posts unflattering photos on social media. Dear Eric, I have been married to a wonderful man for 44 years. My husband has a large following on social media platforms due to his former career. For the most part, he makes interesting posts, and these posts are seen and commented on by many people. My complaint is this. My husband seems to, whether intentionally or unintentionally, continuously post extremely unflattering pictures of me on social media. If I comment on an unflattering picture that he has posted, he will rather begrudgingly take the offensive picture down. His response to me is that I don't like having my picture taken, and he's not wrong. Knowing that my picture, whether flattering or not, is going to be shared or posted or shared with our family is extremely daunting. When my husband takes a photograph, he never looks at it. He thinks all the pictures he takes are perfect with the first take. My question for you is, how do I approach this habit of constantly posting unflattering photos with him? Or do I let this be the one minor thing wrong with this otherwise wonderful man? From Photoshy. Dear Photoshy, it's worth bringing up because it makes you uncomfortable and is therefore creating an issue in your marriage. Honestly, it's not unreasonable to say, please don't post pictures of me on social media at all. This gets around the issue of debating what is a good photo, which could just distract you both and really isn't the point. He has a different standard than you do, but it doesn't matter if he thinks the photo is fine. You don't want those photos online, especially in front of a large audience. It'll be important to point out to him that this is a professional space that has garnered a lot of attention, and therefore it has to be held to a different standard. There are ways of using social media as just a private photo album or a diary, but it is designed to be public and for content to spread beyond its context. Remind him that you have a different relationship with his public than he does, and ask that he keeps photos of you to himself. Dear Eric, after doing all chores and maintenance around the house for 40 years, I advised my husband he must help. Not sure if it's a benefit or a cure or curse. I give instructions on how things work best, and I swear he purposefully refuses to follow through. He'll run a dishwasher when it's only a quarter full. He did the laundry, but he stuffed the machine without separating colors. Then he has the kazoos to tell me that since he's taken over, things are better. If he vacuums, he never moves anything. He just goes around a cat toy or his shoes. One day he said he'd clean the bathroom. I thought, oh, that's nice. Not. He put a toilet bowl cleaner in the toilet and walked out. When I asked about the rest of the toilet, sink, countertop, bathtub, mirror, floor, and garbage, he became ugly and said I'm nuts and that it's not necessary. He's 79 and I'm much younger, but the stress of his complacency is overwhelming. He's become a crabby, stubborn, mean old man. I never understood when Grandma would complain because he was so nice to me, but now I see how wives become mothers to old husbands and they become stressed, overworked, unhappy spouses. How do I fix this? From Messy House. Dear House, oh, it sounds like you could use a third-party help here to diffuse some of the tension. This might be a friend who can help you decide what cleaning tasks are most important to you and can perhaps walk him through modifying the way he does it, or a couples therapist who can help you communicate better. A lot of the valid frustration you're feeling is pent up from 40 years of not having your efforts matched by his. So while it isn't fair that you were doing all the home maintenance, you may want to temper your expectations around him changing immediately. I'm not saying this is right or that he can't change. I'm saying that he should have done this earlier, and no amount of dishwasher loading is going to make up for the fact that he hasn't addressed that imbalance. So I suggest that you talk with him about how you felt and ask him if he understands. Then talk about what's going on with the chores now and ask his perspective. You may find that there are some chores that you'll never see eye to eye on. It's up to you to decide if you're happier having it done or having it done the way you do it. But addressing what happened in the past will help you both clean up the present situation. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Following is analysis, and this is on World News, and it talks about King Charles' visit to the U.S. and is filled with political undertones. London. King Charles III isn't an elected politician, but his trip to the United States has political implications. The monarch's state visit to the U.S. to mark the nation's 250th birthday comes as extreme political movements are on the rise back home, echoing political divisions facing Americans, and placing a spotlight on the UK's relationship with President Trump. Reform UK, a far-right political party, and the Green Party, a far-left Liberal Party, lead ahead of May 7th elections across the United Kingdom, according to a recent Ipsos UK polling asking who citizens expect to win. Meanwhile, voters expect to maintain Labour and Conservative parties to see losses, the polling suggests. And April opinion polls by Ipsos in the UK shows Reform UK in the lead, with 25% of the voters saying they intend to vote for the far-right party and 17% saying they will vote for Green. These refreshers, more extreme parties, aren't officially linked to any U.S. political movements, but there are parallels in their origin stories. They have similar domestic causes. Tony Travers, Associate Dean of the School of Public Policy at the London School of Economics and Political Science, told USA Today, naming high living costs and concerns about immigration as key factors. It's a turbulent time for UK government. Here's a look at politics in Britain and why it matters for Americans. The state of play in UK politics. Increasingly sharp political divides backdrop the King's visit to the U.S. The Liberal Labour Party currently holds power in Parliament, but is increasingly unpopular, according to David Dunn, professor of international politics at the University of Birmingham. Living costs have continued to rise, while UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in a fragile position as he's criticized for broken campaign promises, such as reversing a pledge to abolish tuition fees for students. Dunn explains. He's also come under fire for his pick of U.S. ambassador, who was removed from office and arrested due to his ties to disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. The anti-incumbency trends means a willingness to deviate away from the two main parties, Dunn says. There's a fracturing in UK politics. MAGA, Reform, UK are similar but different. From frustrations with the major parties in the UK has risen more hardliner coalitions, pitching themselves as changemakers. In the same way Make America Great Again was born from the Republican Party, Reform UK broke away from the traditional Conservative Party, Dunn says. Reform UK echoes the driving forces behind the MAGA movement in that it promotes immigration crackdown and blasts the incumbent government for failing on affordability. Reform UK, like MAGA, also has a highly charismatic leader in Nigel Farage, who, like Trump, touts a radical shift from the status quo and identifies as a leader who comes from outside the political establishment, Dunn explains. The same way you understand where MAGA came from, you can understand where Reform came from, he says. By promising everything opposite all at once, Farage can build a coalition that gets support. Reform UK is similar but different to MAGA, Travers says. Reform UK is distinctly secular while Christian nationalist values underpin MAGA, Travers says. And its causes are centered around definitely UK concerns, specifically the economic aftermath of the UK's referendum to leave the European Union in 2016. Reform UK has also worked to carve its own image separate from Trump, Travers says. Farage has sought distance from Trump. Trump doesn't play well in British politics, Travers says, even though Reform has similar concerns to those who vote MAGA. Far left is chasing Mamdani's success. While Reform and MAGA aren't exact counterparts, the Green Party, a far-left party also emerging in the UK, is set on mimicking the successful progressive campaign of newly inaugurated New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani, Travers says. He says the Greens, led by London Assembly member Zach Polanski, sees Mamdani as a hero. Polanski wants to follow the Mamdani path to garner votes, Travers says. For liberals who see Labour as too soft on progressive causes, the Green Party is a popular new route that aims to deliver on unemployment for young people and increase public funding for health care. Polanski wants to follow the Mamdani path, Travers says. King is lowercase political. Charles' visit also comes amid declining popularity of Trump among British people, Dunn says. The president's forging of war in Iran has driven up global oil prices, while his tariff policies continue to increase costs for British people, and tensions worsen over U.S. use of British air bases for the war in the Middle East, he says. He's something that does not fit well with the British people, Dunn says. Some may want the king to avoid the president. Others may see the king's role as something beyond current political rife, he says. If they see Charles meeting with Trump or the Chinese president, people in the UK know this is part of a diplomatic magic to smooth over diplomatic cracks, Travers says. The king is not an elected official and does not have political power. Meeting with Trump doesn't indicate any political attitude from the king either way, Dunn says. It's part of Charles' job description as a ceremonial figure to represent his country and keep political beliefs aside, something his mother modeled with presidents across the political spectrum, Travers says. What's being celebrated here is the wider relationship and the bigger picture rather than the individual people, Dunn says. And he is head of state of Canada, Australia, and the UK, which are key members of international alliances with the U.S. Charles' mission will be to remind Trump of the symbolic value of these relationships at a time when global security hangs in the balance, according to experts. The stakes are so high, Travers says. The future of NATO, peace in Europe, peace in the Middle East, all are in some extent in King Charles' hands, reinforced by the fact the UK government is in such a weak position despite at the moment. He's a lowercase p political.
Thank you, Larry. Bird populations shrink faster in agriculture hotspots. A new study found that bird populations are declining at a faster pace in areas with a lot of agriculture, especially in the Midwest. The loss of bird populations has been documented since the 1970s. A landmark study from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, published in 2019, found the North American bird population is down by 2.9 billion breeding adults across geographical regions since then. The recent study at Ohio State University found that across North America, more than 120 bird species are experiencing decline, and of those, more than half are experiencing accelerated decline. Researchers focused on geographic areas where they saw faster declines in bird populations, including in the Midwest, California, and Mid-Atlantic states. They then focused on potential causes and found a strong link between accelerated bird decline and areas with a lot of agriculture. The data we had access to were the amount of pesticides used, the amount of fertilizer used, and the amount of croplands, said Francois Leroy, the lead author and a postdoctoral student at Ohio State University. Prior studies found habitat loss, declines in insect populations, and the climate crisis to be key contributors to bird decline. The new research found that agricultural practices are speeding up the already occurring decline, Leroy said. You could have a decline, and just the decline per se was related to the temperature, where the acceleration of the decline was related to agricultural practices, he said. The study was published in Science in February. Mike Ward is a professor studying bird behavior and ecology at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and read the study. He said these findings, though new, were not surprising. Some changes in agricultural practices have led to reductions in habitat and likely food availability, he said. Increased fertilizer use and a lack of native plants around fields may be behind the faster decline of bird populations, he said. The pressures on farmers to get as much yield as possible, he said, and that easily results in getting rid of hedgerows, getting rid of other pieces of habitats, and then using various chemicals or fertilizers to try to maximize yields. Creating more land that's habitable for birds would help populations, Ward said. He points to a program from the U.S. Department of Agriculture that pays farmers to convert highly erodible and environmentally sensitive acreage to vegetative cover. Birds' decline has grave consequences for broader environmental health. Birds regulate insect populations, spread plant seeds, and are an important element on the food chain that other animals rely on. Ward said he knows farmers are concerned about the environment, including bird loss. They really want to do things, and then we've got to think strategically about these small things they can do. Andrew Stillman, an applied quantitative ecologist with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, said the study's findings are important. Now, more research needs to be done to find solutions, he said. It's time to understand the mechanisms behind these changes, using more localized studies that go above and beyond the correlations shown in this study to show which aspects of agricultural intensity are impacting birds the most and what can we do about it. Stillman said he thinks it's still possible to stop the decline before irreparable damage is done. I also think there's good news here because we've seen it's possible to reverse these declines, he said. Think about birds like bald eagles or peregrine falcons or even some waterfowl species. There are a lot of success stories that we've seen over the last 50 years, and it tells us that recovery of bird populations is possible. But if nothing is done, bird populations will continue to decline at increasingly faster rates, Leroy said. If we continue to use intensive agriculture, this acceleration should continue, he said. He hopes the study will start conversations, especially in the agricultural community. The most important thing here is to start a dialogue with the farmers, because we need to keep in mind that farmers are the real field experts, Leroy said. They're the ones who are walking every day in the fields. I think they'd have a lot to say about what we've observed in the data. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. DOE charges former FBI chief a second time. Trump foe imposed image of 8647 on his Instagram feed. Washington. The Department of Justice has brought a new criminal case against former FBI Director James Comey, a source familiar with the case said Tuesday. Comey was charged with threatening the life of President and making a threat in interstate commerce, according to an indictment filed Tuesday. Fox News, citing unnamed sources, reported the case was about a social media post Comey made last year that Trump allies interpreted as threatening. The post, which was published on Comey's Instagram page in May 2025, showed an image of seashells arranged to show the numbers 86, 47. The number 86 can be used as a verb meaning to throw somebody out of a bar for being drunk or disorderly, and 47 is code for President Donald Trump, the 47th president. U.S. officials investigated following the post, which Comey later deleted. Comey said at the time he assumed the post was a political message and didn't think it advocated violence. The indictment would mark the second time the Justice Department under Trump indicted Comey, a longtime foe of Trump. And in a similar plane, we've got FCC orders early review of ABC station licenses. Action is in response to Jimmy Kimmel's joke about First Lady. Los Angeles. After a joke by late-night host Jimmy Kimmel drew calls from the White House for ABC to fire the comedian, the U.S. Federal Communications Commission on Tuesday ordered an early license review of the network's television stations. The standoff between President Donald Trump's administration and the global entertainment conglomerate is the first crisis facing Walt Disney's new CEO, Josh D'Amaro. Last Thursday, Kimmel, whose late-night TV program airs on Disney's ABC, did a send-up on the annual White House Correspondents Association dinner, joking that First Lady Melania Trump had a glow like an expectant widow. The joke was made 3 days before the actual black-tie dinner celebrating press freedom and free speech in Washington. The President and First Lady were rushed from the dinner following an assassination attempt. On Monday, the Trumps called for ABC to fire Kimmel, the latest incident of the White House pushing back on free speech that has roiled the world of late-night comedy.
Kimmel said the expectant widow comment was a joke about their age difference. Now, negotiations. Can I read that one, Larry?
Be my guest.
Okay. Negotiations remain at standstill. President unhappy with the latest proposal to set aside nuclear talks. From Dubai, efforts to end the Iran conflict were at an impasse Tuesday, with U.S. President Donald Trump unhappy with the latest proposal from Tehran, which he claimed informed the U.S. it was in a state of collapse and figuring out its leadership situation. Iran's most recent offer for resolving the 2-month war would set aside discussion of its nuclear program until the conflict was concluded and shipping disputes resolved. Trump wants nuclear issues dealt with from the outset, a U.S. official briefed on Trump's Monday meeting with his advisors said. In a social media post Tuesday, Trump said, Iran has just informed us that they are in a state of collapse. They want us to open the Hormuz Strait as soon as possible as they try to figure out the leadership situation, which I believe they will be able to do. It was unclear from his post how Iran might have communicated that message, and there was no immediate response from Tehran to Trump's latest comments. Earlier, an Iranian army spokesperson told state media the Islamic Republic did not consider the war over. Iran largely blocked all shipping apart from its own from the Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point for global energy supplies since the war began February 28th. This month, the U.S. began blockading Iranian ships. Hopes on reviving peace efforts in a conflict that has killed thousands, thrown energy markets into turmoil, and disrupted global trade routes receded since Trump last weekend scrapped a visit by his special envoy Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner to mediator Pakistan. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Arqi shuttled in and out of Islamabad twice during the weekend. Since several senior Iranian political and military figures were killed in U.S.-Israeli strikes, Iran no longer has a single undisputed clerical arbiter at the pinnacle of power, which may be hardening Tehran's negotiating stance. The killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on the first day of the war and the elevation of his wounded son, Mojtaba, to replace him as supreme leader has handed more power to hardline commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Iranian officials and analysts say.
Thank you, Linda. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, April 29th, 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Linda and Alice.
and Larry Beenan. Thank you for listening, and please continue to stay safe.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the New York Times Style section. Following that at noon is the USA Today. Stay with us for these readings and more. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes